Mr. Mayor, it's time.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 3, roll call, please.
Mayor Donald Hewitt.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tempore Margaret Morales. Councilmember Mitch Lindemann.
Here.
Councilmember Tanya Acosta. Present. Councilmember Ray Shelton.
Here.
Councilmember Michael Valdenegro.
Present.
Councilmember Jose Grijalva.
Here.
Interim City Manager, City Treasurer Luis Pedrosa.
Present.
And Mr. Mayor, for the record, Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tempore Morales is excused.
Do we have Dennis on the chance? So not for this.
Not for.
Perfect. I just thought I heard it, but it must have been from somewhere else. Thank you. Okay, item number 4, presentation discussion pertaining to Substance Use Prevention Coalition. We have Ms. Elsa Orozco with Amistades here today. So we'd like to invite you to the table and be comfortable and please tell us what's going on. Your way. Also, Alex, yeah, you can come help too. Alex is involved in this project also.
Hey, good evening, Mayor, Jewish, and council members. Thank you so much for having us tonight. My name is Elsa Orozco, and I'm the project coordinator for Amistades, Inc. And I coordinate the Maya Well Prevention Consortium, which is a new substance abuse prevention coalition here in Douglas. And I'm here to present to you about the new consortium. Okay, just a brief introduction about what the consortium is. The purpose of this grant is to train, mentor, and establish a substance abuse-based substance abuse prevention coalition here in Douglas. And we will do this through training, technical assistance, mentoring the new coalition members. Of course, we will provide educational material concerning related to fentanyl, counterfeit pills, and psychostimulants. And the goals of the coalition is to establish a coalition with representation of 12 community sectors with a vision and mission that reflects substance abuse prevention with primary prevention services. The second goal is to utilize strategic prevention framework model, which is the SPF model, and the 7 strategies of community change to use both consistently to access, plan, and implement science-based substance use prevention activities. And the third goal is to develop and implement substance use prevention activities. And the fourth goal is to conduct a comprehensive community needs assessment and develop a coalition action plan. And of course, the fifth goal is to be ready to apply for grants once the coalition is trained and educated. Strategy number 1, which is to create the coalition. We will recruit the needed sectors and representative and members to serve as a coalition members. Establish vision and mission statement for coalition. Establish purpose, goals, and objectives, and establish structure and operations procedures. We will train the coalition by providing the coalition the training of the SPF model and training on the 7 strategies of community change. We will develop prevention activities. We will create a map of the resources that we have in the community. We will leverage resources and we will fill the gaps where necessary by implementing prevention activities. We'll plan for sustainability, which we will prepare the coalition for grants, search and apply for grants to support and sustain malaria prevention consortium. The end. I want to ask of your collaboration, and if anyone would be interested to participate in the coalition. This is a really important project that we're doing. Right now with COVID and everything, we've had a few overdoses, and we have, a lot of stress and depression, so we really feel like we need to get out there more and inform the community and the youth.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, thank you for this opportunity this afternoon. See?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the chance to letting us come and speak to you. There's many topics in Douglas, there's many problems in Douglas, and we can deny. Yes, we can't deny substance abuse is a big problem in our community, just like it is in every and any other community out there. And what we're trying to do is very simple. We're going to gather a group of people that is willing to work to make a change. We cannot let our youth die with all the drugs and everything that is out there. She mentioned some of the drugs that are the latest, psychostimulants, fentanyl, counterfeit pills. One single pill that one of the youth can take and they can die. It doesn't take a long-term addiction. It doesn't take a lot of effort. And I have youth in Douglas, and I have a son in Douglas, and I know you guys do, and I care for them. And I do not want to lose, not even one of yours, not one of mine, not one of anybody's here in Douglas. So we're just gathering here a group of people again and trying to make a change, whether it is awareness, prevention, conference information, you name it. We're going to do all the job. We're going to do all the work, all the research. We're going to get organized. I know she read a lot of probably prevention language that is hard to understand, but in a nutshell, we will do the work. We will write the grants. We will go into the schools and prepare everything that needs to be prepared. What we need and what we're here to ask is for your support. We do have a model of prevention that it's called the Strategic Prevention Framework that says that if you gather at least 12 different sectors of your community, you have a 90% success rate when it comes to substance abuse prevention. And those 12 sectors are a big variety of sectors, for example, the parents and the youth and the business and the law enforcement and education, and the list goes on. And one of those sectors needed in order to make effective change is government. We can work as much as we want, but if government is not involved at whichever level you guys can participate and support, it's really not going to make as big of a change as if you guys were involved. So 12 sectors. We do have 10 to 11 sectors already secured, and people on those areas that are willing to work with us to fight this fight. But we are missing the government sector. So why not coming to the source and talk to you guys that are the government and ask if any of you guys would be specifically interested on becoming part of this group. What are you committing to if you decide to come with us? In the future, when we meet in person, number one, excellent lunches, we promise, good food. Number two, for now, it will be a meeting once a month that it could be anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes. Right now, everything is virtual. We keep them really short and to the point. I'm sure you have full-time jobs or full-time activities, and you do not have time for another long meeting to your existing schedule. So at least for now, again, virtual meetings once a month, and we do gather and analyze what is going on, what are the problems, and then most importantly, what can we do together as a community. And whatever the group decides, then Elsa will do the coordination and the work on doing all the prevention and all the grant stuff and all that information. And I'm here to support Elsa on her job. And I'm here to, of course, promote and try to do substance abuse prevention in this community. So that's in a nutshell, in a summary. Yes, questions?
No question, but you'll have somebody.
Okay,
Well, I'm sure well, make sure you have somebody.
thank you.
The other thing, for those you know, this has been going on for quite a few years. Alex has been instrumental in other programs to help our community with this, which I'm ashamed to say that I didn't know that was going on, that she was doing that work, but it exists. And it's a concern of mine, and I know of the council, that we look at all avenues to help protect our kids. And that, like you said, it comes from various different ways, activities involved with them, showing them care, mentors, et cetera, to try to help diminish this great evil, I don't know how else to put it, that is out there that unfortunately attracts our children. So thank you for that. It's a wonderful presentation. Does the council have any questions at this time? Or I know we have your contact information. Well, thank you. Oh, please, Mr. Shelton.
What avenues are you using to help with this? Once again, what things are you doing to help out?
We currently are focusing on 3 main areas. One is substance abuse prevention awareness. We need to let the community know about what exists out there. Number 2, we're doing a youth component to it. We're going into the schools. We currently have a program going on in the schools that brings not only substance abuse prevention information, but it's coming along also with increasing life skills and resiliency. It's not enough nowadays to just go into the schools or talk to the youth and tell them don't do it. It needs to come with another component, especially in the latest times when anxiety and depression and all these other things because of COVID have come up. It's a combination course, so youth are getting the information. We were very active with local PTSO, so we were trying to get the word out to the youth. And then lastly, the community component. Again, because of this sectors coming together, one of the sectors, for example, being the churches, through the existing churches, we would have cafecitos, pláticas, or any source of information, printed information, social media campaigns. It's really creative because once the group comes together, there's 12 or more different brains figuring out how to take this information and what's the best information to bring it out. So it's from every single possible way that we can.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you so much, ladies, for coming and making our community aware, and thank you for all your efforts to make us a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for the time, and please, we need one of you guys to officially become a member, if you don't mind. We're going to stay till the end, so you can talk to us at the end, and we can answer many questions. Or if you have an idea of a project related to substance abuse in the community, we're more than happy. We have a really good company. This company, just really quick, it's based out of Tucson, but they are very involved in Cochise County, and the name is Amistades. And they'll be willing to support us whether we decide to do a campaign or write a new grant, or community collaboration. It's really nice because they really ask us, how does it work down there? What do you think we should do? How can we support you? What grant should we write in order for you guys to be successful in Douglas and Cochise County? So take advantage of our collaborations and our work in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5, presentation discussion pertaining to the Douglas Infield and Downtown Revitalization Strategy. Just want to make a note that Mr. Shelton has a very important task that he needs to take care of, and probably will be excused during this presentation, but just wanted to let everyone know that that's on the horizon. So, who's going to take the lead? Mr. Pedrosa, please?
Yes. Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I just want to give a little background first while we begin the presentation. As we know, the two-port solution is the best alternative for addressing our current challenges at the existing port of entry with the recent feasibility study conducted by GSA in 2019 confirming this. With the issues of lack of space that provide security concerns for the officers, as well as adding congestion to the queue, the dangers of crossing hazardous materials through both cities downtown, the need for a separate port is very present. With this in mind and in anticipation of the new port being built, GSA partnered with EPA to provide assistance for the planning of the transformation of the city's downtown as we move commercial traffic out to James Ranch Road. The team will discuss the process that was undertaken to perform this study, developing strategies and action plan to make ourselves ready for this exciting change coming into our city. The study helped Douglas explore strategies for leveraging the port projects for economic development consistent with the city's vision for the future. I also want to say that this study obviously came at a very challenging time with COVID. I'm sure the staff and the presenters will cover that, but it was really fun to be a part of it. I know the mayor was a big part in this study, and I think he had a lot of fun doing that as well. But the participation was just amazing. We have a lot of those participants online right now, and they are possibly logged in right now. And that being said, I would remind that those that are not speaking to please mute yourselves so that there's no background noise. With that said, I'd like to hand it over to the GSA team and the staff presenting tonight for the Douglas Infield and Downtown Revitalization Strategy presentation. Ruth, are you there?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're going to advance to the next slide. My name is Scott Stallman. I'm with EPA out of the San Francisco Regional Office. I'm very happy to be here this evening with you all. I work in our Community Revitalization Program, and we have partnered with GSA as an agency for a number of years now. GSA is always looking to leverage its federal investments in real estate and other federal developments to make sure that the community benefits and to advance community goals. In our Community Revitalization Program, partners with GSA with the same goals in mind, but also to help ensure that any growth and development a community does benefits its health, its environment, and also develops its economy. How this partnership works is GSA funds provide some funding to EPA, and then we bring on some EPA contractors. And that's what we did in this case. We worked with two contractors, one called Renaissance Planning, which EPA has quite a history of working with on community revitalization issues, and another called Smart Growth America. And the technical assistance, as was mentioned earlier, had to be virtual, but it was contractor-led, but with quite a bit of participation by the two agencies and more. And again, we brought this technical assistance to Douglas to help the city and its local partners best leverage the potential federal investment in modernizing the existing port of entry near downtown, as well as the investment to establish a new commercial land port of entry just west of downtown. And the idea being we would leverage these federal investments to help strengthen the local economy, revitalize the downtown, improve the overall quality of life in Douglas. So this evening you'll see some of the results of that technical assistance in the report that was issued a few months ago. And you'll see a number of the strategies and the actions that were identified to start rethinking Douglas downtown. So with that, I think I'm handing it over now to my GSA colleague, Anthony.
Thanks, Scott. Matt, if you could go to the next slide, I'd be grateful. So first of all, let me say I am thrilled to have an opportunity to address the Douglas City Council. I am sad that I don't get to do it in person. Those who know me know I love to spend time on the border, and visiting communities like yours is probably the best part of my job. As Scott was mentioning, as I think many of you are aware, back in 2019, GSA completed what had been a 2-year feasibility study, looking at a couple of major issues. First, understanding what the potential for growth in the commercial and non-commercial processing at the Douglas ports of entry, and also the best way to meet those needs. And I think I don't have to tell you that one of the things that we learned in going through this process is that the commercial functions that happen at Raul Hector Castro are really incompatible with a vibrant downtown like Douglas's. With the heavy mining equipment and the hazardous materials that come through supporting the mining industry, and the landlocked nature of Raul Hector Castro and the Mexican port of entry in Agua Prieta, it's really, it was incumbent upon us to find a solution that relocated commercial activity outside of the port of entry. We were grateful during that feasibility study to receive a commitment from the city of Douglas to donate to the federal government 80 acres for that future commercial port of entry. And really, actually, we were finishing that study up. The funding for this study came together. But let me talk about the findings of our feasibility study first. So the findings of that port of entry identified the need to construct a new standalone commercial port of entry. That commercial port of entry will be master planned to process both commercial and non-commercial flows. And then also, we identified a need to expand and modernize the Raul Hector Castro port of entry, which I think most of you are aware is really at the end of its functional life. And while there are some great historic structures within that port, the overall processing facility, because it's trying to be a multimodal port and include commercial activities, is really too cramped for either commercial or non-commercial flows. So with the study, with the city offering the 80 acres site, GSA was able to roll into our study some additional services, which included developing programs of requirement for both the commercial and non-commercial ports of entry. As a note, I will add that one of the things that was identified is because of the extreme temperatures in Douglas, it's anticipated that the commercial port of entry will include enclosed dock spaces. We developed detailed cost estimates for both the commercial and non-commercial ports of entry. And we actually studied the proposed 80-acre site, doing some soils testing, a cultural resource analysis, and a phase 1 environmental document. And so really kind of laying the groundwork to be able to successfully construct that new port of entry once the funding for that project comes forward. Again, I can't tell you how great it is to work with the City of Douglas. Our feasibility study was really successful, partially because we had great participation from city staff as well as political leadership in Douglas. And so I am confident that with the work that we all have completed on this urban planning study and the work that we completed in our feasibility study, the Douglas projects are well positioned for success. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ruth Krager to speak about the study.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Hewish and council members. Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be back with all of you. Thank you also for all the stakeholders who participated in the workshop. Some of them have joined us tonight, and it's great to see those familiar names. I'm Ruth Krager. I'm a community planner with the GSA Center for Urban Development, so I work out of Washington, D.C. And my program provides technical assistance to project teams around the country and communities like Douglas. I'll talk a little bit more about why we do that and the goals in a minute. But first, I want to give you a sense of the process. So we are right now in March 2021. You see that blue square on your screen. We started just about a year ago. So March 2020, we had our first kickoff call with the consultant team that Scott talked to you about, EPA, GSA, and then the core city team. And over the course of the spring and the summer, we did activities like identify the stakeholders. The consultant team did some preliminary research and analysis on the existing conditions in Douglas. We started to plan the workshop. Right around June, we decided that we were going to have to think about how to do a virtual workshop. So we spent the rest of the summer pivoting to that. We actually held our virtual workshop in September. Over the course of 2 weeks, we had 5 sessions, each about 2 hours, all on Zoom. And out of that engagement, the consultants took all the data and the findings from that process and started working on the report. So they did that through the fall. We had regular check-ins with the city team to make sure that they were on track. They were communicating the key ideas that came out of the workshop appropriately. And then they delivered their final report to us in January 2021, so a few months ago. Today we're presenting that formally to you, the City Council and the Mayor. But we hope that this past year is really just the start of what will be an ongoing relationship and sort of collaboration as we work to implement the plan and as GSA builds our project. So Matt, we can go to the next slide. So Scott went into this already, but basically we do this technical assistance, often through EPA, sometimes in-house, because we want to help communities prepare for big GSA capital projects. So the federal government, which is basically like all of us, right, the American taxpayer, is investing tens, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars in communities around the country. And we want to do our best to make sure that communities are prepared for that and so that they can really benefit from the investment that the federal government is bringing. So we've seen this process also be useful to our GSA projects because we're able to use these technical assistance workshops to build relationships with our stakeholders. In this particular case, we were interested in making sure that the services and infrastructure were going to be in place for the GSA project. And so really the technical assistance in Douglas focused on 2 main areas. The first was trying to think about economic development in the downtown. How could we support the creation of a more walkable, bikeable, vibrant place, right? What kinds of infill techniques or reuse of vacant properties or kind of support for new amenities and activity could the community work on so that residents and visitors want to come to downtown Douglas and want to spend time there and enjoy all it has to offer. The second piece of the technical assistance was looking at what planning needed to be done in preparation for the Newport area, so outside of downtown. There were probably some land use regulations that needed to be in place in order to support the development of some kind of industrial park. We knew that we needed services and infrastructure. The services apply both to the construction phase of the project, so we'll have an influx of workers. We're going to need lodging and restaurants and entertainment all throughout the several-year project. And then, of course, we need services and infrastructures to support the completed project, right? So all of that was part of the study and what we asked the consultants to look at and to lead us through in the workshop. So the initial goals that you see on your screen were what we brought to the workshop. We had developed them over the course of the summer with the core team at the city, and the consultants brought them to the workshop as the starting point to refine over the course of the workshop with the various stakeholders. So we can go to the next slide. I'm actually going to turn it over to Peter, and he's going to try to give you a little bit of a sense of what virtual stakeholder engagement looks like and how we did this virtually. We got input from the public and all of the participants that we have join us over the course of those 2 weeks.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As noted before, this was a bit of a difficult process because of COVID. We had to do things a little differently. Instead of getting us all together in a room, we had us on Zoom and got us all together virtually. And we found that didn't really limit participation. We had a great turnout of both city staff, county staff, elected officials. SEGO was there. We did have representatives from state and federal agencies, higher education facilities, local business and property owners. The consultants were there. The IDA, the Arizona Mexican Commission were all represented. So we had a lot of folks who got together, and it really gave us a lot of good feedback, much better than we would have expected going into this with the untried nature of virtual presentations. Next slide, please. But before we even got there, we wanted to get a groundwork of what we were looking at. So we created a survey. It was bilingual. It was available online and on paper. And we had 115 people respond. What you're seeing here on the left is one example. It's a word cloud of what was most important to people. And we see a lot of those words, community and family, stand out a lot. So we knew that's where we were starting from. On the right, you're seeing another example of one of the questions, what were people looking for in downtown, and some of those particular answers. But this, again, gave us that groundwork going into that virtual engagement, knowing where we were coming from so we had some common ground to start from. Next slide, please. We had over 50 participants in this, and this took place over 5 two-hour sessions spread out over a couple of days, and we would break out into smaller groups a couple of times to really let groups drill down into very particular areas. So we'd always start with a big idea, and there were 4 of these, and we'll see those later on. From there, we drilled down into what are the strategies to meet the big ideas, and then really into actual individual actions to make those strategies happen, to make those big ideas work. And we found the virtual format actually did work quite well for doing this. Next slide, please. So one of the things we also did was we created these virtual maps, and we had folks just really drawing on the maps on the computer. What are the important areas? You'll see some of these later on, or at least the data that comes from these, the maps that were generated from these. But we asked people, what are the important economic drivers now? What are the opportunities? Things like vacant buildings or vacant lots downtown. What can we quickly and easily turn around? So we got to see real time, sometimes perhaps even better than we might have done in person. We got to see these computer data, computer maps generated, and get a real broad consensus very quickly. So we had a lot of success doing this. Next slide, please. These are examples of actual goals that we got. We'll see some of these again later on. And instead of getting a big round table of people hemming and hawing over them, we were able to just, with our little stamps on the computer, vote what was most important to us. And again, you start to see broad consensus very, very quickly. And this really showed again how useful this virtual participation was, even though it was outside the norm. They call it dotmocracy because we saw, we're voting with dots, but it did work really well, and we saw results very quickly. Next slide, please. And we'll see some of these later on. You saw these in the report where we started getting into really the nitty-gritty, where we had a specific action, who was going to take the lead on it, who else was going to be involved, how long it would take, how much it would cost, and what our other resources were. But being able to do this virtually, we'd break out and come back, and we're able to do it in a way that the city might not have had physical facilities for, but we were able to do this on this online forum and really get a lot of good consensus, a lot of good information, a lot of good actions, a lot of good planning very, very quickly. And it really turned out really well. The participation turned out really well, and we got some really good results. And with that, it's next slide. And I don't recall if I'm returning it back to Ruth or someone else from GSA.
Yep, no, to Ruth. Yeah, thank you, Peter. I would just say, this is the first time we had ever done this virtually, and so it was new for GSA and EPA, and we were really fortunate to have such a great city team to support us because, we were all learning together, and the community, the participants were really engaged. They gave lots of input. They showed up to every meeting, and so we're just really grateful for that, and thank you all for doing that. So I'm going to walk you through some of the major sections of the report. It's divided into the 5 sections that you see on your screen, and I'll cover them sort of briefly. There's certainly lots more detail in the actual document, which I think you have access to now. And I also wanted to offer, we are happy to meet with people one-on-one or have discussions in depth about any specific section as you have time to go through it. or if anything comes to mind while we're talking tonight. We can go to the next slide. Part of the work of the consultant team before the workshop was to do background research. So they reviewed a lot of the existing studies and plans that have been done recently. They did analysis on their own. So at the top of the screen, you see the 4 types of analysis that they did. They did a SWOT analysis, which looked at some of the strong bases that exist in Douglas to generate economic growth. Anthony mentioned there's this strong relationship to IBOC data, and obviously being or having the land port of entry in your community is a great opportunity. The team examined the real estate trends. They looked at some market volatility, but also some opportunities for development, where some of the gaps were in the real estate market. They did something called the Fiscal Hotspot analysis, and I'll talk about this in a little more detail. But what this does is to look at where you have high-value parcels across your community. And the idea is that if you can focus your new investment around existing high-value parcels, it's likely to sort of have more bang for your buck, and you're likely to generate additional value and investment if you do it strategically around these areas of existing value. And then lastly, they did a really in-depth deep dive of your existing zoning code. So the idea there was to understand what the existing code allowed, what kind of development was allowable under the existing code, and where might there be some opportunities to make some amendments or changes in order to allow for the type of development that the group identified in the vision. And I'll come back to that and talk a little bit more about that later. We can go to the next slide. You'll see in the report that there are multiple stories from other communities, similarly sized communities with similar issues, not all border stations, but all of them trying to do this sort of revitalization work and economic development work that we're talking about. So you can think of them as examples for best practices and success stories, strategies that you might think about using in Douglas. One of the things they did do was do a comparison between Douglas and 2 other Arizona port cities. And they concluded that Douglas is actually quite well placed. It's a little smaller than its peer cities, but it does have some strong economic indicators. And there are also some similarities, like same industries, similar conditions, and that represents a real opportunity. One of the strengths of being a border town in Arizona is that you have these peer cities, and that you can all work together as as partners, not competitors. You can share best practices. These 3 communities are all anticipating a major GSA project in the near future. They're thinking about some of the same issues, and there's opportunities to share resources, share ideas, share grant opportunities, share things that each community has done successfully that might also be good candidates for other communities. You can go to the next slide. A big part of this report and the work of the consultant was to think about the opportunity that the existing built environment in Douglas presents. So your downtown has these very good bones of a tight street grid. It has sidewalks. Not every community is that fortunate. And so we really wanted to think about how to take advantage of that and to build on that to create sort of this walkable urban place. That's the sort of place that we know is attractive to people and brings people and activities to your area. Obviously, being near the port or having a port in your city is a huge advantage. You have 2,300 pedestrians and 4,800 vehicles crossing every day. Many cities don't have that. They would love to have that many visitors coming through their town. And so there's a real potential to capture the activity here from both sides of the border. You are not limited to just what the market inside the city limits can support. And that's a real advantage for you. So what we did in the workshop was to think about and to ask participants to give us input on what are the places that are important to connect people to. How can we help pedestrians get from the port to kind of nodes downtown, key centers of activity downtown? How do people travel west into downtown from Pan American Avenue as they go north from the port and out to other parts of the region? Right? These are the sorts of questions we were asking in order to capitalize on, or try to capitalize on, the possible kind of strong elements of walkability and connectivity in the downtown. And then the next slide. So I've mentioned already that the consultant team did this fiscal hotspot analysis. And what the team was trying to do is identify what the areas are across Douglas that are currently generating the greatest value per acre, and to focus development and investment to those areas. So there are several of them. I think we had 5 hotspots around Douglas. Several of them are residential, but one of them is in the downtown. So what that means is there are these high-value parcels downtown, and you are going to maximize the value of other investment if you co-locate it with those existing high-value parcels. There's a lot of potential to be strategic about where you, especially in the beginning, put your investment dollars and where you guide investment. And so that's what this analysis is trying to point out. Also in downtown, you can see on the slide, there's some unused land and vacant buildings. There's also a gap in the existing residential stock, right? All of those things represent opportunities. You know you have kind of some space in the market to take on some new investment, and there's a place where you know it is likely to be most successful and contribute the most value. So try to bring those 2 things together. Can we go to the next slide? There's a significant section in the report that looks at the new commercial land port entry that Anthony talked about as an opportunity. Because how we plan for the new port, how we build the new port, and what happens after it's a functioning port are all really important to Douglas being able to get the benefits from that port. So in the first place, the new port is an opportunity to bring new types of economic activity to Douglas and to the county. It's likely to attract new commercial or industrial investment. The area is also a qualified opportunity zone. So that's the pink that you see in the map, kind of around downtown Douglas. If you're not familiar with opportunity zones, they are a type of tax incentive that was created in the 2017 tax bill. And it's a way for the private sector investors to get a tax benefit for any investment that they do inside that zone. So that includes the new port. Relocating the heavy commercial vehicles and the industrial uses like the chemical storage and equipment storage that Anthony mentioned is also a great opportunity. It's a chance to think about downtown in a different way, maybe reimagine some of the spaces that are currently dedicated to heavy equipment or storage. It's a chance to think about a more human scale, a safer pedestrian environment, the sort of place that, again, attracts people and contributes to vitality instead of sort of these static storage uses that may be in some parts of downtown right now. There's also this big opportunity that comes with the GSA project, right, which I started to talk about earlier. Expanding both the new commercial port and the existing port is going to increase crossing speeds. And we know that when people get delayed, or there's a lot of congestion and waiting at the border, that can have economic impact. It's easier to cross from the 2 countries back and forth. People might choose to do that in a discretionary way. Maybe go out to dinner more often or take some extra shopping trips, right, that normally would take too much time, so they can't do. So there's this opportunity to make the crossings easier, to bring people and their economic activity and buying power with them. Businesses can get their materials and their products across faster. All of that offers potential positive economic benefits for Douglas. And then finally, I do want to mention that the GSA construction project will last a few years. It's going to bring a group of new workers to the community for that length of time, and planning now for how and where you will meet the demand of that population, whether that's lodging or restaurants or retail or other services, is really vital, right? We want to be able to capture that spending in Douglas and not lose it to other jurisdictions because Douglas wasn't prepared in time to meet those needs. The next slide continues this conversation and tries to highlight the considerations that the consultants raise in the report for what to do. We have these opportunities. Here's some of the things to think about in order to capitalize on them. The new port needs infrastructure. It's going to need roadways and utilities and broadband, water and wastewater. All of that needs to be coordinated with the local governments, but also the county, the state, and federal partners. It's a major infrastructure expansion, and it can't happen overnight. So that's something that needs to start sooner rather than later, and it already has. I've done a lot of work with that. With the extension of these services and this new infrastructure out to the new port, there is the potential for sort of unbridled growth. You could imagine a scenario where you see a lot of strip-style residential or retail or service development, and that could be counterproductive to the sort of downtown infill growth vision that was identified in the workshop by the Douglas stakeholders. It may also be incompatible with a future sort of industrial area, right, around the new port. So there is a role here for growth management strategies that would balance kind of the need for infill development in downtown and industrial development or industrial land uses and commercial land uses around the new commercial port. Growth management takes planning, and you have to sort of get ahead of it before it happens. So one of the things the report suggests is that as a supplement to the Cochise County Master Plan, we would consider perhaps doing a more detailed area plan of the new port space. And that would indicate areas where port-related industrial or commercial uses are appropriate. It could talk about things like transportation facilities and locations for transportation facilities, or what form the new development around the port should have. Again, the idea is that some of the advanced planning and regulations that you put in place now will have an impact on the type of development that you see both at the new port and in downtown. So preparing now for the land use changes that you might expect downtown, maybe that's a bunch of new vacant warehouses or new streets that open up and can be redesigned. Those are the sorts of things that you want to be thinking about now in preparation. You can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk next about a series of maps that you'll find in the report. They were developed out of the kind of group virtual mapping activity that Peter talked about. And they are basically a way to spatially illustrate the strategies that the group identified in the workshop. So the map that we see on the screen now is the growth and connectivity map. And it shows where the city prefers growth and the sort of infrastructure that each type of growth would needs to support it. So in the little inset map, you see the downtown. The downtown needs pedestrian enhancements and infill development of vacant parcels and buildings. The new port area, which you see kind of in the bigger map in the background, needs the infrastructure and connections that I talked about. So the red dashed line that you see going from downtown Douglas out to the new port site is indicating the idea of a utility corridor. So there are some efficiencies offered if the utilities and the broadband, water infrastructure, all of those things are coordinated and aligned. There are some efficiencies to be realized. So the report suggests thinking about this utility corridor and talking to the partners at the city and the county and the State Department of Transportation to plan for that. There's also a green dash line that talks or that indicates the idea of a future walking or biking trail that could help connect people from downtown Douglas and the people who come over from Pueblo Prieta with opportunities outside in the wider county, whether that's educational opportunities at the college or future jobs that may come around the new port site. You'll see in the inset map for downtown, the blue dashed lines are emphasizing these pedestrian corridors, key pedestrian corridors, where investments in pedestrian infrastructure can be focused. And if we go to the next map, that sort of expands on that idea and really hones in on the downtown pedestrian connectivity. It looks at the keynotes of activity in downtown Douglas. That includes at the bottom left of the map, you see the existing Royal Castro Landport entry. You see the 5th Street retail and commercial hub. You see the warehouse area that's just east of the existing port, and then this downtown core that kind of runs up and down G Avenue. And you'll remember that market study that the consultants did had identified these parts of downtown, or this part of downtown, as a fiscal hotspot. And the idea of this map is showing that we want to be thinking about knitting these nodes together, right? Building these corridors that tie all of these important places together as a way of improving walkability, getting people to the place you want them to go, and supporting this vision of a revitalized downtown core. Pan American Avenue is a big opportunity. Right now it has these heavy trucks and commercial vehicles on it, but it actually has relatively low traffic counts. So once the commercial traffic moves to the new port, there may be an opportunity here to rethink Pan American Avenue over time and develop it into a more complete street that meets the needs of different types of users, so pedestrians, bicycles, transit riders, and traffickers. It's also important to think about connections, east-west connections between Pan American Avenue and G Avenue, because that's one of the key ways that people would get from the port of entry, the Royal Pasture port of entry, to where you want them to go, to the parts of downtown Douglas that you want to bring them to. The plan suggests, and you can tell from the map, that you not stop at G. As you work to improve walkability and pedestrian connectivity and corridors, you also want to think about expanding that to all the way to A Avenue, which is further east, so that people living in the heart of Douglas and who want to have good options for walking downtown and getting to the shops and retail and events that are going on downtown. It's important to think about residents, not just visitors. Both of those populations are really key to supporting kind of a vital, thriving economic district in downtown. We go to the last map. This map tries to look at the opportunities for infill. So it highlights in green the parcels, those kind of small green polygons or rectangles, are the sites that we identified in the workshop as infill opportunities. So it's either vacant land or vacant buildings that could be rehabilitated. It suggests by the colored dots on each parcel 3 categories of use, new uses for those sites, whether that's housing or tourism or retail. The 3 categories are the types of uses that draw people to them, that create economic activity and foot traffic, which is what you're trying to get in downtown. I mentioned earlier that there is very little residential right now in downtown, and there's a real opportunity there to expand and have sort of an existing permanent customer base as you increase the number of people who are actually living close to the businesses and the services that are provided downtown. You know, the next slide. So the work that we did in the workshop with the consultants was sort of under this framework that you see. It's a framework that's been successful in other communities to help them think about growth revitalization. And so we used it to guide the conversations through the course of the workshop. And the focus was on these 4 areas that you see. Basically, what are the priorities? As you start making public investments, where should you start, focusing? What is the policy or regulatory environment that you want to develop? Are there any policy or regulatory obstacles that you want to remove in order to get the type of development you want to see? Who should you involve? And what are the strategies that you can use to improve the image or the market desirability of the areas where you want to see growth? So in our case, downtown or the industrial area around the new port. We go to the next slide. So we use that framework to focus the conversation during the workshop, and the results, together with the analysis and all the input that we got in the workshop, was 4 overarching strategies. And I'll cover each of them in a little bit more depth in the next few slides. But first, Matt, you can go to the next slide. I just want to highlight for you, I know this is hard to read probably from where you are, but in the report, there is this implementation timeline, and it's an estimate, but it does speak to the fact that it's going to be important to think about how you phase certain activities and certain strategic actions. So what this timeline is trying to show is how you might think about aligning various strategies and actions with each other and also fit them in with the GSA project. It makes sense to do some activities on the front end. For example, you would want the Newport area plan or infrastructure extension to be ready to go in advance of the GSA construction for the industrial port. You would want to think about making sure you have in place enhanced downtown services, right? New lodging options, retail, restaurants, before you see the influx of new workers coming to work on the GSA project, right? So get some of your infill pieces in place in advance of that. So that's the type of question that this is trying to highlight. It's just a guide, but it does matter when you do stuff and how it fits in with the other stuff that is happening or that you are trying to do. Okay, so we can go to the next slide, and I'll just spend a few minutes talking about each of the strategy areas and the actions associated with them. The first strategy focuses on G Avenue, specifically between 9th and 12th Streets. It's a pretty small area. There's already a streetscape plan underway for this corridor, and the actions in this strategy are looking at quick, cheap solutions that you can start implementing now without having to come up with any major capital funding. So the actions are things like street dining, pop-up spaces or events, using paint or lighting or branding to make the pedestrian environment better. These are all things that usually happen from sort of a bottom-up rather than top-down space. So a business owner could go out and do, tables in front of their restaurant or make a little parklet on the street or something like that. So they can be citizen-led and they're pretty affordable typically. They also can be short-term or temporary. So it's this opportunity to test some concepts, see how they work, see how they fit into Douglas. So the two photos that you see are from other communities, also pretty small communities. The paint at the bottom, the two images on the bottom are from Boston. And you can see they just went out and used paint to create some curved extensions, right? They didn't have to use any concrete. But it's a way of enhancing the pedestrian realm and making that intersection safer for pedestrians and also creating sort of a fun, lively, identifiable place in that community. The image on the top is from a community in Pennsylvania where they had a fire which burned down sort of a series of shop houses. And in response to that, they created these pop-up retail sort of cabana things so that, the business owners didn't lose revenue from having to close their business while they found new places to be. And it also created this nice concentration of activity, right, where people from the community or even outside the community wanted to be and wanted to go. We can go to the next slide. The second strategy is about thinking about your great building stock. So, like I said, Douglas has these really great bones and a lot of beautiful historic buildings or unused parcels. And the strategy is trying to think about how to do infill and how to leverage kind of your existing building stock and reinforce the sense of place that you can bring to that. One of the things that was suggested in the workshop was to do a vacant building inventory. So sort of marketing material that you can share with developers to show them what's available in downtown Douglas, help them imagine what they could do in various buildings or on various sites. The workshop participants also suggested ways to build on Douglas's rich history and share that with tourists and residents through some kind of history trail that tells the story of Douglas through its building stock. There are actions in this category to think about the financial tools that you might need to help developers do this sort of reuse projects, especially in the beginning, to get people started doing this so they have confidence and they can make it happen successfully. It's important also to think about the possibility of investors from across the border. New investors across the border on the Mexican side that could be marketed to use some of Douglas's buildings or parcels for their business ideas. Next slide. This third group of actions and strategies goes back to walkability and the idea of making a gateway enhancement. So we've spent a lot of time, you may have noticed, talking about the pedestrian environment and the infrastructure that supports kind of walkability. And the reason for that is walkability really helps create a sense of place. A gateway enhancement would create a sense of arrival. And together they can sort of guide people to where you want them to be. So in this case, maybe from the existing port into key nodes around downtown, like the G Avenue corridor, the Phase 2 retail district, or something like that. This category of investments is a little more substantial than the first group that we saw. It's maybe something you do in a second phase after you've done some of the concept testing. It's things like building out, changing, lanes, maybe putting in medians, which you can see sort of in the two before and after images on the screen. But the goal is to try and make downtown Douglas, using these design solutions, a place where people want to be, a place where they can get around easily and comfortably, no matter what their age or ability or situation is. So things like wayfinding and bike lanes and streetscape, all of that contribute to helping people know where to go, first of all, but also want to go there and just think of downtown Douglas as a place they want to spend time and spend money. The next slide is the last group of strategies that really focuses on your planning and policy environment. So this applies both for what you want to update in your downtown regulations, as well as what you want to have in place for the Newport area. So making sure that you put into place the right regulatory and policy framework is important, because that will shape the development that happens at the new port in a way that aligns with the vision for that port area, as well as being strategic about the sorts of vision that we have for downtown and the regulatory environment that you put into place so that that can happen. I've said this before, but when you don't have these things in place, you can end up with development that's in conflict with your vision. Or that makes it difficult to support, right? You can imagine, again, all that strip development out near the Newport might be very expensive for the city of Douglas to support with services over time, right? Whereas if you can focus denser development and more activity in downtown, you already have existing infrastructure there, so it's a lot cheaper for you to maintain service to those kind of new investments and businesses that may happen. One thing I'll flag is the report. The consultants did this extensive zoning analysis, and so they suggest ways to use your zoning code to get at your vision. So some of the examples are things like allowing for mixed-use development, which is not really allowed for downtown today, reducing the size of the lot requirements so people can build on smaller lots, reducing restrictions like fewer single-family areas. A big chunk of the zoning currently allows only for single-family zoning. So thinking about the type of code you need that would allow for mixed use, maybe retail on the downstairs and residential on the upstairs or something like that in downtown would be helpful. And then again, we mentioned this before, but the idea of doing a small area plan for the spaces around the existing port to prepare for some of the land use changes that you can expect once the commercial uses move out of downtown is also something that the report suggests. Now we go to the next slide. Everything that I've talked about is distilled in this action plan section of the report. Each of the strategies is broken down into very specific concrete actions. And each action comes in this table with details about who should take the lead for that action, who the partners or stakeholders should be, what time frame should it be done in, how much would it cost, and then also what are the resources that are available for implementation. And the next slide and the last section of the report is very focused on implementation. So we know that some of this stuff is not easy and will take significant resources. And so the report includes a list of places to get additional technical assistance or funding. Some of it's grants, some of it's loans. But they're very targeted at the sorts of interventions and projects that were identified in the workshop as helping Douglas kind of move closer to the sort of vision for downtown and the Newport that they've articulated. We also hope that you will think of the project team, so myself and Scott and all the federal folks and stakeholders from the workshops as new resources. So GSA doesn't do grants, but we can still do kind of staff assistance. We've had other communities use reports like this one that have come out of these technical assistance projects and incorporated them into their grant applications so that they've been able to write really successful grant applications by showing evidence from this process of collaboration and visioning and consensus building, and sometimes graphics that come out of these reports can be helpful. And we hope that you will continue to reach out to us and see us as a resource as you move forward. We're always happy to try to connect you if you're struggling to get in touch with an agency partner at the federal level or the state level. We're always happy to help do that too. And I will say, I've probably done half a dozen of these now since I started working at GSA. And it's always really exciting when you have a great community and a lot of interest from the leadership in the community too. And you have both with great staff and great support from your leadership. And so we thank you for your participation in the process and for inviting us to do this with you. I'm going to turn it over now to Reese. He is going to talk to you a little bit about some of the progress and the steps that have already been taken in the year that we've been working together as the team on the ground has been trying to move forward with implementation.
Thank you, Ruth. First, I want to mention the very first point that has been in place already for some time now, that serves as an incentive for the downtown, and that's the impact fee waiver that's in the infield zone, as well as the sales tax incentives that are currently in place. The other progress that we've made in line with the strategies that we've spoken and along with the vision and strategic plan with the city, the county master plan being completed, we heard that presentation last month from Stantec, and the water and sewer feasibility study being completed for the new commercial land port of entry. Next, the downtown streetscape design study is underway. We expect that to complete sometime around November. We hired a grants coordinator, marketing and communication specialist, also in line with these strategies and helping us accomplish some of these goals and strategies and within the strategic plan. And as we all know, we already have a newsletter that was recently created. Next slide, please. The other thing that's in progress is the transit site selection study. The final recommendation will be done in April. The completion we estimate would be around May, June. Right now we were told that the results is that the vacant lot on 9th and G is the leading recommended site for the transit facility at this time. As you know, we also sold the vacant parcel here, catty corner to City Hall, to the Art Car World Museum, which will be used for parking. We are aware of 3 recent building sales in the downtown within I want to say the last few months. And we all are also aware of the grant-supported purchase of the drive-in movie screen that was located in a parcel in the downtown area in the old Kmart building. And with that, I will turn it over to Anthony to close out.
Thank you so much. So as you can see, with the partnership of the city, Mayor Hewish, the consultant teams, Friends of EPA, we've been able to put together a really robust study for you all to think about and to use as a way to help plan the future endeavors. When we do these presentations, the question we're always asked is, hey, what can we do to help the process? And as you're probably aware, I guess as an executive branch agency, we don't lobby for projects. We don't go out and seek support for our projects. And so in a lot of ways, it is up to you as the community affected to really raise awareness with state and federal partners of the importance of the land ports of entry projects, to talk about how Raul Hector Castro plays a part in your community and how the development of the two-port solution is going to create opportunity for economic opportunity for your citizenry, for your community. You know, how these ports really play a key role in the lifeblood of the Douglas region. You know, one of the things that's been really obvious to me while working on the study is the value that your staff brings to the city in general. You know, we work with a lot of different cities, and the staff in Douglas has really been one of the strongest that I've had the pleasure of working with. And so the City Council support with city staff on things like property tax abatement programs, land banking, community development corporations, tax credit financing. Those are all ways that you can help your staff really help grow the opportunity in downtown Douglas. You know, we talked earlier about San Luis and Nogales, going out and working with your peer cities and understanding what they're doing. You know, I'm kind of speaking to the choir here because I know that the communities in Arizona all work closely together. But I think looking at how they're dealing with these projects, particularly a community like San Luis, where there is a federal project on the horizon, is going to be helpful for you. And you know, we did a study similar to this with the city of San Luis, and so looking for best practices, kind of talking about some of the challenges that we've had in working with the city staff. I think that it's just a good process for y'all to reach out and kind of share information. And then finally, and probably most importantly to the success of the two-port solution, is the city and county's efforts to bring water, sewer, high-speed data, and electrical out to the James Ranch Road area. We've talked a little bit about the Stantec study that the county has been working on, but really the success of our project is really going to be driven by the ability of the city to bring those important services out to the port. You know, we're looking at ways to lower the environmental footprint of our new port of entry, and actually Raul Hector Castro as well. But we need to have those services in place, water, sewer, electrical, high-speed data. They're critical to the success of the port. Next slide, please. So as Ruth and Scott and I'm telling you now, we're not going anywhere. And so we want you to look to us as a resource as you go through the process. If there's anything that we can do to assist you. Matt Hsu, who has been running the presentation for us tonight, is also an architect with GSA and a great resource. On the phone today we have James Vogel, who has been assigned as the project manager for the future projects. Really, GSA is here to assist the community in this pre-development phase and really assist you with kind of thinking about what needs to happen. But really, at the end of the day, I like to say that our land port of entries are all about developing increased economic opportunity for the regions and the communities that we serve. And so as we bring this, you know, potentially, you know, hundreds of $1 million projects to Douglas, we're hopeful that you're going to leverage that investment and really create a sense of place, a sense of community, and a Douglas as you'd like to see it going forward. And again, we hope that we can be part of that through the development of our facilities, but then ongoing with, you know, by developing great facilities, good members of the community. And with that, I'd like to offer to respond to any questions that folks might have. You have the whole team on the phone, and I want to thank everyone for your participation and your patience.
Thank you, Anthony. This is Mayor Hewish, and I want to reiterate that this, I think we throw around the word partnership a little loosely sometimes, but I think we've developed a strong relationship. And you could actually see the interest and tell the interest that these people have in Douglas. I know probably this group, and correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony's the only one that's been here because we had to do this virtually. But you could tell the excitement that they had for Douglas because they saw the potential there. And that's what excites me, is that that's what the future has for us. And this is a catalyst project, meaning the two-port solution to handle the needs of CBP and GSA. And it is a catalyst for Douglas, and we need to take advantage of it, and I truly appreciate it. The council have any questions? Must be good. You did an excellent presentation, and I would like to suggest to the council at a future meeting that we actually formally adopt this as part of our downtown and also our port of entry strategic plan. That's part of it, so that we can publicize that and make sure that people use that, as Bruce said, as an attractive document to be able to show people what's going on around here. And because of this project alone, we've had an increased number of people coming around to kick our tires in Douglas. And to me, that's amazing. And part of it is because of this. And so again, thank you, EPA, GSA, for developing this program here a few years back. And it is vital to our existence and to our future of Douglas. Do I want Douglas to go crazy as far as growth? No, we don't. And so I think some of the strategies, especially that Ruth pointed out towards the end, of getting ahead of the game and be able to plan it and show the direction that we want to go is crucial. And so staff is excellent staff. They have a lot on their shoulders now to be able to make that happen. So anyone else have any questions? I know we don't have too many of the public here tonight. Susan, anything?
Or on the phone.
Or on the phone, we have people on the phone also. Well, it's a wonderful presentation, and we truly appreciate it. And again, the offer's there. If you do have questions tomorrow or the next day or next month, these people are there and are willing to take the time to assist us. And again, thank you, Ruth, Anthony, and Scott. We're extremely grateful. And Anthony, whenever you can get back down here, you're more than welcome as always. And Ruth and Scott, we hope to see you also soon down here in this beautiful part of our wonderful country. Thank you.
I can't wait, Mayor Hewish, and again, thanks to everyone, and thanks to all the people in Douglas. We really have a soft spot for you all, so thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, this is Jeff Hayes. I just, from USDA Rural Development, I just was a little technical challenge getting my mic on, but I just wanted to say hi, and while we were more of a passive participant in the development of this process, we hope to be more of an active partner with you guys in your actual programs and in your project development. So I would probably be seeing you guys next week at the Bay Acres grand opening, ribbon cutting, and but we look forward to having more conversations about some future projects with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff, so much for that.
All right. All right. You're welcome. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before we adjourn this evening, I just want to
Goodbye.
Oh, see ya. Thank you. Just wanted to mention this special week that we have celebrating Easter this upcoming Sunday. I hope it all offers all of us an opportunity to refocus and see what's important in our lives and what's important in our community. And can't stress enough the wonderful people that we have in Douglas. I tend to get emotional every time I talk about it because it's amazing to me. And that's what we always tell people. If you can just come down and meet us, you'll see what kind of people we have here, and you'll fall in love with the place. So with that, we'll go to item number 6, adjournment. I have a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mrs. Costa.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lindeman. Motion by Mrs. Acosta, second by Mr. Lindeman to adjourn this meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Motion carries. We stand adjourned at 6:50.